really pleased to have in the studio with us Keya Chatterjee. She's the Executive Director of U.S. Climate Action Network. She's the author of The Zero Footprint Baby. And the website for U.S. Climate Action Network is usclimatenetwork.org. However, and the Twitter account is USCan, at USCan. And Keya's is at Keya_Chatterjee, Chatterjee. But the big deal here is peoplesclimate.org. And tell us about peoplesclimate.org. This is the upcoming climate march. Tell us about this, Keya. Welcome. First of all, welcome to our studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So we are planning a massive mobilization on April 29th. It's a group of organizations that it originally came together 2 years ago when we had a big climate march in New York City. And we realized that in the face of the Trump administration and literally everything that we and our families hold dear being at stake, we needed to come back together. So it's not just the climate at stake, of course, it's workers' rights, it's jobs, it's livelihoods, it's LGBTQ rights. It's really everybody vulnerable, differently abled people. And now we believe is a time for solidarity and a time to stand up. So we've scheduled this mobilization to be exactly 100 days of this madness. And marking it together as a community and pushing back in solidarity.
Well, that's interesting. So April 29th is the 100th day of the Trump administration?
That's right, yeah. And it goes right into May Day and other celebrations of workers' rights that are really important, you know, in our society, and we really want to lift up. So it's going to be really an incredible weekend, and we're hoping to attract people to come to D.C. for the event. Because we think it's really important to stand up to what we're seeing on a regular basis. You know, this is not a time to sit on the couch and watch TV and shake your head. This is a time to stand up and be counted and push back because it's really going to take all of us. We had a tagline in our march that we did 2 years ago in New York City, which was the largest climate march in history. It was 400,000 people just in advance of the UN heads of state meeting. And it was to change everyone, it takes everything. And that couldn't be more true than now. Everything is at stake, and it's going to take everyone speaking up at every turn in order to turn this around.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you're saying, please come to Washington, D.C. if you can. But there's also going to be marches all over the country, right? All over the world?
We don't know yet. So we definitely saw with the Women's March, obviously, that, you know,
things go viral really fast.
Things go viral. That things that, you know, once you build up enough momentum that, you know, you start to get satellite marches. And that's happened at the climate march that we did 2 years ago as well. There were a lot of satellite marches, not only around the U.S., but around the world. Right now, we are at the point where we're asking people to register for this march in D.C. and to physically come to D.C. because this Congress and this administration need to physically see people in front of their faces. We saw with the Women's March that it actually gets under their skin. And so we're asking people right now to come to D.C. and come together. Hopefully I feel confident we will build up enough momentum that satellite marches will appear as well. But we do need people to make the trip to D.C.
Okay, and that's peoplesclimate.org.
That's right. And you can sign up as an individual, and if you have an organization that wants to be affiliated, there's a survey there you can fill in as well.
Is there anything specific that you're going to be calling for, or, you know, hey, we need a carbon tax, or is this more like this is a big issue, the media is completely ignoring it while they're taking hundreds of millions of dollars from fossil fuel companies for advertising? They're afraid to talk about this. The Republican Party won't talk about it, claim the whole thing's a hoax. The Democrats are pushing hard, but it doesn't get much traction in the media. So is this more like, hey, let's all wake up, or do you have specific demands?
We have specific demands. And the core organizing principle around the march we did 2 years ago, which actually really was critical to getting the Paris Climate Agreement, which ended up being this big international agreement that seems to be holding up even in the face of Trump with the rest of the countries of the world. And it was an incredibly important moment. And our philosophy there was we are going to put the people who are affected by climate change, affected by the impacts of fossil fuels directly in the front of this march, literally in the front. And so there were points where we were even, Leonardo DiCaprio and celebrities were asking if they could be in the front. And we were saying, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, people who are very important to our movement. And we held firm that no, the point of this mobilization is to really highlight for people that these are not victimless crimes that we're talking about when we move forward with policies that don't think about justice and climate change. And so what we want to put forward is the voices, stories, and impacts of people who are affected by climate change.
For example, tell us some stories.
So, I'll first speak to myself. So, of course, I'm a mom, hence the Zero Footprint Baby book. But it affects me personally in that way. It also affects me because I live in Southwest DC, right? It's a low-lying area in DC. Had Sandy hit a different track and hit DC, my neighborhood would have been decimated where I live. It also affects me because my family comes from what's now Bangladesh, which is a place that is already feeling the impacts of climate change. So it's a deeply personal thing for me. But more importantly, there are communities that are in New York and New Jersey that have already suffered from displacement. If you think about Katrina and who was displaced, one of the things that we sometimes forget is that we can all in this country close our eyes and probably picture who was displaced by Katrina, who was displaced by Sandy. It's disabled people, it's communities of color, it's low-income communities. Those are the people that suffer the brunt of whether it's a flood, whether it's a drought, any kind of extreme weather event. They're the people who suffer, and those are the people whose stories we want to lift up, in addition to making this a solidarity moment where we're saying we realize everybody is under attack right now, and that's one thing we have in common, and let's use this moment to really stand together with the most vulnerable people who are vulnerable to climate change and every other policy that's being put forward by this Congress and this administration.
Right. So the bottom line here, we're talking with Keya Chatterjee, excuse me. Peoplesclimate.org. Go to the website, sign up, come to Washington, D.C., be part of history, be part of holding the Trump administration accountable. It sounds bizarre even to say that phrase. Accountable, and Pence and company, all these guys who are wholly owned by the petrobillionaires, time to put them on notice. We're here. We're paying attention. We want some stuff done right. Do I have that right?
That's right. Join us.
Okay. Thank you, Keya Chatterjee. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Peoplesclimate.org.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
USClimateNetwork.org, of course, too, but peoplesclimate.org specifically for this march. Check it out.